time approaching 25 to 7 on this Monday morning.
Let's bring you up to date with today's front pages of the newspapers. Here's the Times. It's leading with the government's plans to ban asylum seekers who arrive in the UK on small boats.
The Eye reports that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are set to clash with Conservative MPs over their tax plans in the budget.
The Mirror claims 11 million people are suffering without dental care, with patients even resorting to pulling out their own teeth as they wait for an appointment. Absolutely awful.
And the Sun says a Live Aid-style concert's being planned for Wembley in June to support Ukraine.
Well, joining us to go through the papers this morning in more detail is the actor Christopher Biggins and the Deputy Political Editor of The Mail on Sunday, Anna Mikhailova. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
A mixture of front pages on the papers, but a lot of them featuring this story, Anna, that you've chosen on the front of the Times. Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman's big, new, bold plans to try and tackle illegal crossings.
Exactly, but is it big and is it bold is the million-dollar question. This is Rishi Sunak trying to capitalise on his big success with Brexit, trying to fix his next priority, which is small boats, and he's going to announce that people who come in here illegally will never be allowed to come back effectively. So they're trying to do this new deterrent. Critics say that this is essentially window dressing. It's similar to laws that we already have. And personally, I sort of read and I thought, you know, people who are already coming in by small boats have presumably already exhausted the visa route. I mean, you sort of find it slightly strange that someone would go to that desperate a measure and then, oh, well, I'll apply for a tourist visa. You know, it seems like an odd deterrent, but that's...
That being said, Rishi Sunak's trademark is to under-promise and over-deliver. You wouldn't think he would pin his reputation to something if he didn't think he was onto something, or would you?
Well, we shall see. I mean, he is trying to build a reputation as someone who delivers. You're right. I think with Brexit, we certainly saw that. Is this a way of kind of riding in on the coattails of that and try and paint this as similar? Because so far from what we've seen, this doesn't look like any kind of... Well, we shall see, but I think that the stark reality is we've got more than double the number of people coming across in small boats compared to last year.
And people are having their say on this morning. Let me just take Jim as an example. Biggins, he says, read this new law. We will believe it when we see it, I suppose. I still dislike how somehow we have to assume responsibility for them being the migrants, simply by arriving on our shores at our expense. So here's the point. To me, if I was fleeing from some hostile, awful regime in Iran or Syria or Afghanistan or whatever, and Britain was my destination, it's still better than the alternative. It's still better than getting a bullet through the head or detained or put in jail. So it doesn't really matter what happens when I get here, as long as I get here.
Absolutely, and that is why so many people try to get here, and they pay extortionate prices to get here to criminals who take... Those are the people I really am against, because they know these people taking huge amounts of money, they're not going to make it, or very rarely do they make it. And, you know, tens of hundreds of people die, and it's so wrong.
It just seems as though there should be a better way to be able to distinguish between those people who are genuinely fleeing a bullet to the head and those who are coming from Albania on a bit of a speculative, wanting a better life. I mean, we can't blame them for that, but equally we can't afford to take everybody in. So, you know, the Albanian dilemma has to be separate from people who are fleeing.
Yeah, quite right. And there's no solution to this yet. The cost point that your viewer excellently mentions is another good one, because so the Times are saying this looks like it'll cost another $3 billion a year. That's on top of the current $3 billion a year we're spending. And, you know, unless you're actually seeing results, which so far no one has, I mean, that's a lot of money to spend.
Yeah, as Anna says, unless we're seeing results, well, everybody hopes they're going to get a result, but will they? What's your view? What way do you think the situation should be solved? Right, we go to you, Chris, and we've got the Times, and this says basically, if you're applying for a job, if you're going to a job interview, the trick to have up your sleeve is...
A smile.
Right.
Yes. I mean, do you really want to smile? Yes. Say it with a winning smile, then.
You've got a winning smile, Vicky.
Well, that's why I get all the jobs.
Exactly.
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense, this statement, because I think if someone goes in for a job and they're doing, and they sit there and they're doing, you catch that depression.
They drain the energy.
They drain. Very good expression. They drain. Thank goodness you're here, Eamonn. They drain. Absolutely drain. And if someone walks into, it's like when you auditions for parts in plays and television. If you go in and you're high up, and you have tremendous energy, it's great. So you're more likely to get the part.
Well, there you go. Top tip there.
See, I tell you all the time, if you just would smile a bit more.
My husband does say I have a resting face, so I do need to smile a bit more.
No, I don't think you do. I think
good.
and your
Thank you,
smile is
darling.
gorgeous.
You don't have to work with her. Anyway, in tests on 280 people, workers rated candidates who smiled in photos on job site LinkedIn as more competent
Wow.
than those with neutral expressions. So there you are, you can bluff anybody just by smiling. The way to do it.
Right, let's talk about Matt Hancock. Anna, we can't get away from him, can we? Every day for the next little while, he's going to be gracing the front of the Telegraph. What's he said now?
So the latest is Matt Hancock said to Professor Chris Whitty when he was told that you need to effectively, remember when we had the 14-day quarantine, when everyone was getting pinged. So Chris Whitty said to Matt Hancock back in November 2020 that having a 5-day testing regime, so if someone tests every day for 5 days, that will be as effective as the 14 days we had. And Matt Hancock in these text messages rejects it on the basis of it would imply we'd been getting it wrong. So he also says he didn't want to seriously worry people, but what we saw yesterday, where he almost intentionally wanted to worry people with a strain, I mean, I think the concern over how the government was perceived appears to be coming out of this data dump as more and more of the driver, where we were told so many times they were following the science, and here they've got the science telling them, stop back,
What becomes clear and clearer, it was all about the political look. I mean, if basically Hancock was in favour then of people being out of circulation for 10 days as opposed to halving that time, and on the advice of the Chief Medical Officer.
Remember how crippling this was for businesses, for the NHS.
Families as well.
Families especially. I mean, it was just terrible.
And we all know the people who got pinged many, many times. You just sort of look at this and think, well, it's all like a bad dream to a lot of us now.
But look, I'm not here to defend Matt Hancock in any shape or form, but equally, everything has to be viewed through the prism. I mean, we're looking at it with hindsight, and actually being seen to know what you were doing and be in control is important when you are dealing with a crisis. So does he have a legitimate point that, look, if we row back on this, even though, it's the wrong thing to do, I mean, it's easy to say that now, but you can see why that was part of it.
But he's not arguing about control. He's not arguing about enforcement.
Well, he was saying it might help adherence. Is that in the context
Chris Whitty actually says...
But if you actually say to the public, and if you say, look, we're looking at this science, things are changing, we now think this is the best way of doing this.
Which they did many times with other things, don't forget. I think the problem, it's a good point, but when they're saying that this is effectively about the perception of the government, this is a problem now, because when the next crisis comes, everyone's going to look at them and say, well, why should we believe you? You're not following the science. You're thinking about how you look.
Interesting point. Because let's talk about this concert at Wembley that's being proposed, a Live Aid-style benefit concert in June to help victims of Ukraine and Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, I mean, it's saying that the A-listers to turn up the heat on Vlad.
Have you been invited?
No, not yet. I doubt I will. My singing is not the greatest, and I don't think the Wembley is ready for me yet. But it's interesting, in the paper today, it says invited to appear have been U2, The Killers, Rolling Stones, Pink. Also on the wanted list, Florence and the Machine, Noel Gallagher, Adele, Sir Paul McCartney. I mean, it could be the most wonderful since the last Live Aid we had, and which was fantastic. And I think it's great that people are coming out to support Ukraine, because it's such a horrible situation, which seems just to go on. And I just don't know what we can do about it. I mean, we know we're so near, and we could be involved in a big way, in which we're involved anyway, I think, by quite rightly sending them help. But it is a horrible situation.
But this is a way people can all feel like they're doing something.
Yes, and they can raise a lot of money, and a party as well.
Win-win.
Exactly.
Talking about awful situations, in the Mail, they're talking about Harry and Meghan. They can have use of Frogmore Cottage, sort of, well, Frogmore Mansion, whatever it is.
But they did spend a lot of money on it, didn't they?
It's a big place.
Yeah,
it's a big place.
I think the king technically wasn't
They paid
his
it
money.
back. They paid it back when they moved. So it was 2.4 million, the renovation.
Yeah.
And then when they moved, they left the royal family. They paid it back in half.
Yeah.
Doesn't he pay their allowance?
Oh, I suppose technically, or Netflix now.
Well, if they're invited to, well, we believe they have been invited to the coronation. They haven't decided what they're going to do yet. What way do you read it, Anna?
So this is, they've been told that they can use Frogmore Cottage despite having been served a notice to quit in January. And I think the idea is that the palace doesn't want the perception that they've been essentially invited, but then also making things difficult for them in terms of their security. Because obviously one thing that Prince Harry likes to talk about a lot is he doesn't have the adequate security for his family, and Frogmore Cottage is one place that's safe. So I think by saying, well, you can use it for this period, then there can be no claim to say, oh, you've made it difficult for them to come. So now we're just waiting to see if they will come, and as the Daily Mail says, make your mind up time for Harry. But I suspect they will string it out.
Okay, what do you think are the pros and cons of them going or not going? I mean, would any of us miss them if they were not there?
I think we possibly won't. I think Netflix would enjoy an attendance because that would bring them part two. No, I think, you know, as lots of people said, on a more serious point, the coronation isn't about them. So
I think one of the most important things is how they're going to go down with the public. That is the other thing. I mean, they could arrive and they could be booed. And I think the public have turned against them since the book and since all the TVs and things.
Yeah.
And I think it's not a good time for them.
I think that from Buckingham Palace's point of view, I mean, it's a worry if they don't come because it gives them a grievance, and the grievance gives them more material for future books, for future operas. So I can see why the king is keen for him to come. Keep your enemies close.
Absolutely. And I think Charles is a good father, you see, and I think, you know, he really wants his son to be there, which I think is great.
Piggins, last night we came on stage at the London Palladium to raise funds for Great Ormond Street Hospital and to celebrate the 75th birthday of Giles Brandreth. Were you booed?
No, I wasn't, funny enough.
So I'm sure you weren't.
I was cheered, and I was greatly honoured that Giles asked me to come on at the end.
Now, which one are you? Which one are you there in that?
No, there I am. Look there. That's me.
Oh.
That's in the red wig. And I said, I thank.
Do you keep that costume at home?
No, don't be silly. No, it was. How dare you? No, but Joan Collins, I said, thank you, Joan, for the loan of the costume. And I was very careful about the wig. And I said, and Maureen Lipman, thank you for the wig. But Maureen was particularly funny. Joan read Imagine, the poem, the song, John Lennon's song, and she was brilliant. The whole thing was wonderful. I mean, it was a great tribute to all our great dames, and they were all there. I mean, there was I got a list here. There was Eileen Atkins, Fredo Benjamin, Joan Collins, Judi Dench, Sheila Hancock, Twiggy Lawson, Maureen Lipman, Joanna Lumley, Patricia Routledge. Patricia Routledge was fantastic. And Harriet Walter and Penelope Wilton. It was a really great evening.
Why all these dames for Giles Brandreth's 75th? I mean, it's wonderful.
He is the best connected person.
Yes, he is.
He was like that with Prince Philip as well. You know, he knows everyone.
He does.
He's like you.
Yeah.
He knows everybody.
There you go. Well, what a night.
It was a night. It was a night. No, it was a great evening. It really was.
Lovely. Guys, thank you both very much indeed. Really appreciated that. Anna and Christopher will be back in about 40 minutes' time. Thank you very much.